My wife cheated on me. 3 months later, they're together and having family dinners with my parents. Hi Reddit, I31M, thought I had my life pretty well figured out. I've always been a straightforward guy. Work hard, stay loyal to the people I care about, and try to do the right thing. My wife, we'll call her Olivia, is 29. We've been together for 7 years, married for 4. She was the love of my life, or so I thought. She's outgoing, charismatic, and had this energy about her that made people gravitate toward her. My parents absolutely adored her from the start. They would always tell me I hit the jackpot. I met Olivia at a mutual friend's party. I wasn't really looking for anything serious at the time, but she caught my attention immediately. She had this way of lighting up a room. We clicked, started dating, and within a year, we were inseparable. She quickly became a part of my family. My mom would invite her over for coffee and share recipes with her. My dad would talk to her for hours about sports or politics, and she would listen, genuinely interested. They treated her like their own daughter, which made me love her even more. Our relationship wasn't perfect, but whose is? I worked a lot, sometimes pulling long hours as an IT technician to keep us financially stable. Olivia worked part-time at a boutique, but she'd complain about how much she hated it, so eventually, she quit. I didn't mind supporting us because I believed in our future together, but things started to shift about a year ago. Olivia became distant, spending more time on her phone or going out with her friends. I chalked it up to her needing space or wanting to socialize more, but I started to feel like a stranger in my own marriage. Little did I know, this was just the beginning of it all. 3 months ago, my world came crashing down. I found out Olivia was cheating on me with one of my closest friends. We'll call him Ryan. Ryan and I had been friends for over a decade. He was the kind of guy who'd have your back no matter what, or so I thought. We'd go on fishing trips together, watch games at the bar, and he was even the best man at my wedding. I trusted him like a brother. I found out about the affair by accident. Olivia had left her phone on the kitchen counter, and a notification popped up. I wasn't trying to snoop, but the message preview caught my eye. It was from Ryan, and it wasn't something you'd ever want to see your wife receive. My stomach dropped. I unlocked her phone and found a series of texts that left no doubt about what had been going on. When I confronted Olivia, she broke down crying, saying she was lonely and felt like I wasn't paying enough attention to her. She claimed it wasn't about Ryan, it was about her feeling neglected. She swore it was a one-time thing and begged me to forgive her. Ryan tried to reach out too, but I blocked him immediately and decided to cut him off. I should have ended it right then and there, but I didn't. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to save my marriage. So I forgave her, on the condition that she'd cut all contact with Ryan. She agreed, and I thought we could move forward. Around this time, I told my parents what had happened. I expected them to be as upset as I was, to actually encourage me to cut ties with both Olivia and Ryan. Instead, I was blindsided. Unbeknownst to me, Olivia had already talked to my parents and given them her version of events. She painted herself as the victim, claiming that she cheated because I was emotionally unavailable, always working, and not meeting her needs. My parents, especially my mom, ate it up. They told me that marriage is hard and that I needed to take responsibility for my part in what happened. My dad said, "You can't just give up on someone because they made one mistake." One mistake? She slept with my best friend, and they were treating it like she accidentally spilled coffee on the carpet. Still, I didn't think much of their reaction at the time. I figured they were just trying to be neutral and avoid taking sides. But then, last week, everything came to a head. Last Friday, I decided to visit my parents. I've been helping them financially for years. They're retired, and money has always been tight for them. So I've been sending them some cash every month. This time, I thought I'd drop by in person to give them the money and catch up. I didn't call ahead. I wanted it to be a surprise, and I was coming alone because my wife had told me she was out with her friends. When I walked into their house, I was met with a scene that I'll never be able to get out from my memory. Olivia and Ryan were sitting at the dining table with my parents, laughing, drinking wine, and eating dinner like one big happy family. The room went silent as soon as they saw me. My mom looked like she'd been caught red-handed, and my dad wouldn't even make eye contact. Olivia and Ryan, they didn't even have the decency to look ashamed. They just sat there, staring at me like I was the one who didn't belong. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. My parents, the people who were supposed to have my back, were hosting dinners with my cheating wife and the man who betrayed me. I demanded to know what was going on. My mom tried to calm me down, saying they were just trying to support Olivia through a tough time and that I needed to move on. My dad chimed in, saying that life's too short to hold grudges. Olivia had the nerve to speak up, saying she was sorry I had to find out this way, but she and Ryan were happy now and wanted me to accept it. Happy with the man who ruined our marriage? I couldn't take it anymore. I let them all have it. My parents for their betrayal, Olivia for her lies, and Ryan for stabbing me in the back. My mom started crying, saying she didn't mean to hurt me, but it was too late for apologies. I stormed out of the house. I was visibly shaking with anger and was in so much disbelief. Now I'm sitting in my apartment, trying to process everything. My wife cheated on me, my best friend betrayed me, and my parents, the people I thought I could count on no matter what, are fully supporting their relationship. I don't know what to do. I feel like I've lost everything. My wife, my friend, and my family. Part of me wants to cut them all off and start over, but another part of me wonders if that's even possible. How do you move on when the people who are supposed to love you the most turn their backs on you? Advice would be really appreciated. Update 1. So I'm back with some updates, and after the scene at my parents' house, I couldn't go over there again. The anger and confusion were just too much. When I left that night, I barely registered the drive back to my apartment. I needed space to think. I needed some time alone to figure out how I was supposed to deal with this mess. Last night I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I thought about the betrayal, the lies, and how everything I thought was solid, my marriage, my family, was crumbling around me. The fact that my wife, Olivia, had cheated on me with my friend Ryan was still fresh in my mind. I wanted to scream, to lash out, but I knew I needed to get my thoughts in order first. The silence of my apartment felt suffocating. I kept running the events over and over in my head, trying to find something I might have missed, some sign that could have warned me, but nothing. It just hit me like a freight train. For 3 months, I tried to forgive her. She promised it would never happen again, assured me that it was a mistake, and I bought it. I cut Ryan out of my life completely. My priority was Olivia, and I wanted to believe she was genuinely remorseful. But now, everything seemed like one big lie. The more I thought about it, the angrier I got. Not just at Olivia and Ryan, but at my parents. I couldn't wrap my head around it. I thought my parents would be on my side, but when they found out about the affair, they didn't exactly react the way I expected. Instead of questioning Olivia or showing me any kind of support, they seemed to forgive her and act like it was all some misunderstanding. My parents bought into that so much, and now have even started to make excuses for her behavior, like it was somehow my fault. They sided with her. Not directly, but enough to make me feel like I wasn't the one who did dirty in all of this. It hurt a lot, so I decided to go over to my parents' house the next day. I told myself I just wanted to check in, bring them some money, and see how they were doing, but I knew deep down I was really going to confront them. I needed answers. I needed to know why they were so willing to support Olivia, why they seemed okay with the relationship between her and Ryan, even after everything that had happened. When I got to their house, I figured it would just be a casual visit. I didn't expect anything out of the ordinary, but when I walked through the door, I immediately felt the tension. My mom and dad were sitting at the kitchen table, and I had a feeling that something wasn't right. There was no awkwardness, no signs of guilt or regret. It was like nothing had changed between us, and that made it worse. I wasn't going to let this slide. I confronted them right then and there. "How can you just let her back into this family?" I asked. "After everything she's done, how can you sit there and support her?" My dad, who had always been the more level-headed one, gave me some weak response about how relationships are complicated and that I should be understanding. He told me that I needed to consider Olivia's feelings too, that she had been through a tough time and had to make difficult choices. I couldn't believe it. He made it sound like I was the one who had caused the issues. My mom, as usual, was more emotional. She started talking about how she could see how lonely Olivia was, how she needed someone to be there for her, and how I had failed to provide that. She said I needed to look at things from her perspective. I was floored. It wasn't about perspective. Olivia had made a choice. She wasn't some victim in this situation. I had been the one betrayed, and yet, somehow, I was the one who was being told to forgive and forget. I didn't know what I was expecting, but this wasn't it. They weren't apologizing. They weren't telling me they understood why I was hurt. Instead, they were backing Olivia up, justifying her actions as if it were all just a misunderstanding, and I was the one making it worse. It was like they had already chosen her side, and I was being left out in the cold. I couldn't stand it. My own parents, the people who I had always turned to for support, were choosing her over me. It was crushing. I thought about everything I'd done for them, everything I'd done for Olivia, and none of it mattered. In their eyes, she had been wronged, and I was just too hard on her. The more I heard, the angrier I got. I felt betrayed by them too. I was supposed to be their son, their flesh and blood, and yet they seemed so willing to let Olivia and Ryan slip back into their lives without any regard for how I felt. It was like I didn't even matter anymore. At that point, I couldn't take it anymore. I stood up and told them I was leaving. There was nothing more to say. I was done. Before I left, I made the decision right there. I had to cut them off. I couldn't keep pretending everything was fine when it wasn't. I didn't trust them anymore. They had made their choice, and it wasn't me. I drove off feeling numb. I didn't even know where I was going. I was angry and sad all at once, but most of all I was just lost. How could they do this to me? How could they not see that I was the one who had been wronged? It didn't make sense. That night, I couldn't sleep again. I kept thinking about my parents, about the betrayal, and about Olivia. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized I needed to stand up for myself. If no one else was going to support me, I had to be my own advocate. So, I made the decision to block my parents' numbers. I didn't want to hear from them anymore. I didn't want to hear them tell me that I was being too hard on Olivia, or that I needed to forgive and forget. I couldn't do it. I couldn't pretend everything was okay. I don't know what's going to happen next, but for now, I need space. I need to figure out who I am outside of this broken marriage and family. I am not going to let them drag me down with their misguided attempts at peacekeeping. Update 2. Well, so far I got more news on this situation. I spent the next few days in a state of complete numb. My mind was a blur of anger, confusion, and disbelief. Cutting off my parents was a decision I never thought I'd have to make, but I couldn't continue living in a world where I felt constantly betrayed by everyone around me. Still, even after everything with my parents, Olivia was still my wife. She was still living in the house, and despite everything, I couldn't shake the feeling that I needed to talk to her. I needed to hear it from her. The truth. I kept telling myself that I needed to approach this rationally, that I needed to give her the chance to explain herself. I was still holding out hope somehow, that maybe this wasn't all as bad as it seemed, that maybe, just maybe, she had some kind of explanation that would make sense. But deep down, I knew that was just a fantasy. There was no reason to hope anymore. So, I went home. It felt like I had 1,000 pounds on my chest when I opened the door to our house. I still remembered the way things used to be, how easy it had felt when we first got married. Everything was new, full of possibilities. We had a small apartment, a comfortable routine, and even though we had our issues, I thought we were strong enough to work through them. Now, it all felt like a lie. When I walked inside, I found her sitting on the couch, scrolling through her phone, completely unaware of the fighting that was about to happen. For a split second, I almost didn't want to go through with it. I wanted to pretend everything was fine, to bury my anger, but I couldn't anymore. I couldn't keep pretending. "Olivia," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, but even I could hear the shakiness in it. "We need to talk." She looked up at me, acting all innocent and confused. "What's wrong?" I didn't waste time with small talk. "I know about the dinners. I know about you and Ryan. I know you've been seeing him again, and I don't understand why you lied to me." Her face fell, but she didn't look shocked. No, she looked defensive. "You don't get it," she said. Her voice started rising slightly. "You don't understand how hard it's been. You've been distant. I needed someone. Ryan was there for me." My chest tightened, and I could feel my blood start to boil. "So that justifies cheating on me? That makes it okay?" I could feel my voice getting louder, but I couldn't help it. "You're sitting here telling me it's my fault because I didn't give you attention? Is that what you've been telling everyone? You're playing the victim while I'm the one who's been betrayed, again and again." She stood up then, her face full with anger. "You never gave me enough. You were too focused on work, too busy with everything else. I needed someone to make me feel special, to make me feel wanted, and you weren't there. I felt like I was invisible to you. I did what I had to do." I could feel my heart cracking as she spoke. I had always tried to be there for her, always tried to make her feel loved. But somewhere along the way, I guess I didn't realize that I wasn't enough for her. She needed something more. and it wasn't me. But hearing her justify her actions like that, hearing her completely disregard how much I had given, made something inside me snap. I wasn't going to do this anymore. "You can't keep blaming me for your decisions," I said while struggling to keep my voice from breaking. "You chose to cheat. You chose to hurt me, and I'm done letting you twist everything to make yourself feel better. I'm done." Olivia looked taken aback for a moment. She clearly hadn't expected me to say that. I could see her trying to compose herself, but the guilt, the realization that I wasn't going to just let her off the hook this time, was clear into her at this point. But then, she surprised me. "You're really going to leave me over this? After everything we've been through? You're really going to walk away from our marriage just like that?" There was no emotion left in me. No sadness, no regret, just an overwhelming sense of clarity. "I'm not walking away. I'm walking out. I can't keep doing this, Olivia. I can't keep pretending that things are okay when they're not. This is over." It was the hardest thing I had ever said to her, but it felt like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. I had been holding on to this relationship for so long, trying to fix things, trying to make it work, but I couldn't do it anymore. She had destroyed what was left of my trust, and nothing she said could take that away. Her face turned pale, and for the first time, I saw fear in her eyes. She didn't know how to respond. Maybe she thought I'd come crawling back. Maybe she thought I'd forgive her again, but I wasn't going to. "I'm not sorry for this, you broke our marriage," I said, "but I'm done." I didn't wait for her to say anything else. I grabbed my things, packed up a few bags, and walked out. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. I was done, and I wasn't going to keep torturing myself by staying in a relationship that had been broken for far too long. I don't know what is next. I don't know how this would all play out, but I know one thing for sure. I'm not going to let myself be the fool anymore. Thank you for some of you who have helped me to come to this point. I will see how everything else plays out. Update 3. Well, hello again, it's been a minute, and I'm happy to say I finally left that woman behind officially. I had began the process of filing for divorce a couple weeks ago. It was something I had been dreading, not because I didn't want it, but because it made everything feel so final. For weeks, I had been holding on to some sort of hope that Olivia might realize the depth of the pain she had caused, that she'd show some genuine remorse. But that never happened. Every time I thought about the dinners with Ryan at my parents' house, her justifications for her actions, and the way she tried to shift the blame onto me, it became crystal clear. There was nothing left to save. Filing the paperwork was easier than I expected. A few clicks online, a quick consultation with a lawyer, and the wheels were in motion. Emotionally, though, it was anything but easy. I kept second-guessing myself, wondering if I had done enough to fix things, if I had failed in some way. But every time those thoughts crept in, I reminded myself that this wasn't all on me. She had made her choices, and I was finally making mine. When I told Olivia I was filing, she barely reacted. She was sitting on the couch, scrolling through her phone, the same way she had been the day I confronted her. "I figured you would," she said nonchalantly, not even looking up at me. Her tone was so dismissive, so cold, it made my stomach turn. "You figured I would?" I repeated. "Is that all you have to say?" She shrugged, still not making eye contact. "What do you want me to say? You're the one who's giving up." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. After everything, after the lies, the betrayal, the dinners with Ryan and my parents, she still had the audacity to act like I was the one walking away without reason. "Giving up?" I said, my voice shaking with anger. "I didn't give up, Olivia. I fought for us. I forgave you when you didn't deserve it. I tried to make it work. You're the one who chose to blow it all up." She finally looked at me then, her expression blank. "I didn't blow anything up," she said flatly. "I just wanted to be happy." That was the final nail in the coffin for me. She didn't care. Not about me, not about our marriage, not about the destruction she had left in her way after all she did. Her happiness, her needs, her desires, that was all that mattered to her. The next few weeks were a whole load of paperwork, lawyer consultations, and uncomfortable phone calls. Olivia didn't contest the divorce, which made things move quickly. She didn't seem interested in fighting over assets or dragging the process out. In a way, I was grateful for that, but it also hurt. It was like she couldn't be bothered to care, like our entire relationship was nothing more than an inconvenience she was happy to leave behind. The hardest part was dividing our belongings. Walking through the house, deciding who would take what, felt like picking through the wreckage of a life that no longer existed. I packed up my things, leaving behind anything that reminded me of her or the life we had built together. The wedding photos, the keepsakes from our honeymoon, the anniversary gifts, they all stayed. I didn't want them. I didn't want any reminders of a love that had been thrown out completely. When the day came to finalize the divorce, I showed up at the courthouse alone. Olivia arrived a few minutes late, looking completely unbothered. She was dressed casually, her hair pulled back in a messy bun, like she was running errands instead of ending a 7-year relationship. She barely glanced at me as she walked in. Her phone was clutched in her hand like it was the only thing that mattered. The hearing was quick and uneventful. The judge asked a few questions, confirmed that we were both in agreement, and then it was done. Just like that, our marriage was over. I thought I would feel some sense of closure, maybe even relief, but all I felt was emptiness. Olivia didn't stick around to talk afterward. She just walked out of the courtroom without saying a word, her phone already back in her hand. Watching her leave, I realized something. I was mourning the loss of someone who no longer existed. The Olivia I had fallen in love with, the woman who had lit up a room and made me believe in a future together, was gone. Maybe she had been gone for a long time, and I just didn't want to see it. That night, I went home to my new apartment, a small, one-bedroom place that felt more like a temporary matchbox more than a home. I sat on the couch, staring at the walls, and let the weight of everything finally hit me. The woman I had loved, the life we had built together, my parents' betrayal, it was all gone. I was starting over from scratch, and I had no idea how to do it. In the weeks following the divorce, I started to rebuild piece by piece. I threw myself into work, picking up extra projects to keep my mind busy. I reconnected with old friends, people I had lost touch with during my marriage, and started to remember what it felt like to be supported, to be valued. Olivia and Ryan, they were a non-issue. I blocked them both on everything, cutting off any possible avenue for them to contact me. As far as I was concerned, they were ghosts, and while the pain of their betrayal still stuck with me, I refused to let it define me. Life isn't now magically easier, but it's starting to feel manageable. I am learning how to live for myself again, and for the first time in a long time, I feel like I am finally on the right path. Final update. Well, I am back for the last time. This will be my final post. It's been a few months since the divorce was finalized. I finally started to feel like I had my footing again. My new apartment, while small, was becoming more of a home. I'd picked up a few hobbies, reading, hitting the gym, even cooking meals that didn't come out of a box. Life wasn't perfect, but it was mine, and that felt like a win. Olivia and Ryan were completely out of my life, and while the pain of their betrayal hadn't disappeared, it had dulled and numbed me a lot. I was learning to accept that I'd never get the closure I wanted from them, and honestly, I didn't need it. The finalization of the divorce had been closure enough. My parents, however, were a different story. Since the day I walked in on them hosting Olivia and Ryan for dinner, our relationship had been strained, to say the least. After I cut them off, I didn't hear from them for weeks. I assumed they had made their choice, that they were content to side with Olivia and Ryan even if it meant losing me. It hurt, but I told myself I was better off without people who couldn't see how deeply they had betrayed me. Then, one day, my phone buzzed with a message from my mom. "We miss you. Can we please talk?" I stared at the screen for what felt like forever. Part of me wanted to ignore her, to let her sit in the silence she had chosen when she sided with Olivia and Ryan. But another part of me, maybe the part that still craved some kind of resolution, wanted to know what she had to say. Against my better judgment, I replied, "What is there to talk about? You made your choice." Her response came quickly. "We didn't choose anyone. We were trying to keep the peace. Please come over for dinner, and we can explain." Keep the peace. That phrase hit me like a punch to the gut. How was having wine and dinner with my cheating ex-wife and her new boyfriend, my former best friend, keeping the peace? It was nothing more than a betrayal dressed up as being polite. Still, I agreed to meet them. Not because I thought there was anything they could say to make it right, but because I needed to hear it for myself. When I arrived at their house, the tension was high. My mom opened the door, her face a mixture of hope and anxiety. My dad was sitting at the kitchen table, looking far older than I remembered. The whole scene felt surreal, like stepping into a life I no longer belonged to. "We're so glad you came," my mom told me, leading me to the table. I didn't respond. I sat down and folded my arms, waiting for them to start. My dad cleared his throat, his voice gruff as he spoke. "We've been thinking a lot about what happened. We know we hurt you, and we're sorry." I raised an eyebrow, my skepticism evident. "You're sorry?" I said, my voice laced with disbelief. "Sorry for what exactly? For supporting Olivia and Ryan? For turning your back on your own son?" My mom's eyes filled with tears, but I didn't let it sway me. I'd seen her cry before, and it didn't change the fact that she had made her choice. "We didn't mean to hurt you," she said. We didn't know what to do. Olivia came to us after everything happened, and she seemed so broken. She said she felt abandoned, and we thought we were helping." "Helping?" I repeated, my voice rising. "You thought having dinner with her and the man she cheated on me with was helping? How is that helping me? How is that being there for your son?" My dad sighed heavily, rubbing his temples. "We made a mistake," he admitted. "We thought if we stayed neutral, we could keep the family together. We didn't want to lose anyone." I let out a bitter laugh. "Well, congratulations," I said. "You didn't lose anyone. You just lost me." My mom reached across the table, her hand trembling as she tried to take mine. I pulled away, not ready for any sort of physical comfort. "We never wanted to lose you," she said, her voice cracking. "Please, let us make this right." "How?" I shot back. "How do you make this right? You chose her, you chose them, over me, and now you expect me to just... what? Forgive you? Pretend it never happened?" "We were wrong," my dad said firmly. "We see that now, but we love you, and we want to fix this." I shook my head, the anger and disappointment bubbling to the surface. "Love isn't enough," I said. "If you loved me, you would have stood by me when I needed you the most. Instead, you took the side of the people who destroyed my life. You didn't just hurt me, you betrayed me." The room fell silent, the weight of my words hanging heavy in the air. My mom wiped at her eyes, her shoulders shaking with silent sobs. My dad looked down at his hands, his expression unreadable. I stood up, my decision made. "I can't do this," I said. "I can't pretend that things can go back to the way they were. You made your choice, and now I'm making mine." My mom looked up, her eyes pleading. "Please don't do this," she whispered. "We're your parents. We love you." "And I loved you," I said, my voice breaking. "But I can't trust you anymore. And without trust, there's nothing left." That was the last time I spoke to them. After that day, I blocked their numbers and cut off all contact. It wasn't an easy decision, but it was the right one. They had shown me where their loyalties lay, and I couldn't keep holding on to a relationship that only brought me pain. In the months that followed, I focused on rebuilding my life. I leaned on the friends who had stood by me, who reminded me what real loyalty looked like. I threw myself into work, setting new goals, and finding purpose in the things that mattered to me. As for my parents, Olivia and Ryan, they became ghosts of a past I no longer wanted to revisit. I don't know what their lives look like now, and honestly, I don't care. I've learned that sometimes the only way to move forward is to let go of the people who hold you back, no matter who they are. It hasn't been easy, but I'm finally starting to feel like myself again, and for the first time in a long time, I'm hopeful about the future. I don't know what's next, but I do know one thing: I deserve better, and I'm not going to settle for anything less. Thank you to all those that followed me through this.